Okay, so today what we're going to be doing is transplanting some of this dill, which is growing extremely fast and outgrowing the shelf, from the younger dill that we have and also the older dill, which is completely outgrown the shelf. It's growing up into the top there, so it's struggling for light at this point. So what we're going to do is do a little bit of an experiment where we transplant some of the older dill and some of the younger dill with our support dog into some larger pots. Now there is a lot of light coming in horizontally from the grow setup here, so it is going to be a little bit of an experiment to see if there's going to be enough light hitting kind of out this way in order to sustain those plants. But there's so much dill here that if I transplant some and it doesn't quite make it, that it's for science. So we're gonna give it a go, and yeah, we'll see how the growth goes here. So let's get transplanting. So the first thing I'm gonna do is transplant some of the much taller dill. You can see that it's actually getting kind of spindly and starting to bend quite a bit at the stems because of how tall it's getting. So I'm going to transplant some of this dill into one of the pots, and then I'm also going to transplant some of the younger, shorter dill into those pots as well. So we're going to get into that now. When transplanting from the 4-inch pot into the, I believe this is a 12-inch container, all I'm going to do is tip it upside down, grab the stems, kind of massage the side of the container, and then pull it straight out. You can see that there's a fairly decent root ball here. And I'm going to try and pull apart these two plants because it is two completely separate plants. So there will be a little bit of root shock to these, but that's okay. We'll bunch of learning we're doing here today. So there we go. Kind of rip this into two halves. I'm going to rip the lower stems off because these aren't doing anything anyways. And when I plant this, I've noticed that the stem's kind of grown out of the soil, so when I plant it, I'm actually going to plant it all the way down to this point here. So I'm going to be planting it just a little bit lower. So I'm just going to dig a hole, put the plant in, and bury it. Pack it up a little bit. And that's it. I'm going to do that for all these plants here. Just quickly wanted to show an extreme comparison between the containers that had 2 plants in them and the container that had 1 plant in it. So I initially thought that it didn't really matter if you did 1 or 2 plants per pot, but looking at the root structure, I seem to have been quite wrong. So this was a 4-inch pot where I only transplanted a single dill plant from, and you can see that the root structure is just taken off, it's exploded, and opposed to a plant where I had 2 plants. It's not nearly as developed. And this one is actually the most developed out of all the other doubles that I've pulled out. So it's quite a significant difference in terms of root development. So moving forward, I'm probably only going to put, 1 plant, well, for dill at least for now. We'll find out what the other plants look like once we take them apart, but the dill we're going to be doing just 1 at a time. Now I'm going to transplant some of these younger plants, these younger, shorter dill plants, into one of the 12-inch pots to see if there's a big difference between the overall outcome of the dill, between letting it get extremely tall, kind of lanky like this, or if planting it out when it's shorter and bushier into a much larger pot with maybe not as much light, but if that yields a big difference in terms of production. So this would be a good experiment as well. And again, when I'm planting these, I'm going to plant it so that the where all the shoots are coming out, I'm going to plant it so that the soil's up to there. It looks like these were starting to grow out of the soil. It may have been an issue when I transplanted them. Maybe I didn't put them deep enough in the 4-inch pot. So I'm going to transplant them so that this lower stem here is buried. Okay, so there you have it. That was a quick transplant of some dill plants into some larger 12-inch containers. This is going to be a fun experiment. So we've planted out some young dill into one pot, and then we've planted out some older dill that was much longer and a bit hardier, I guess, because it had a stronger root system, into a separate pot. And that, you can see that stuff here, it's quite a bit taller in comparison to the younger pot. But the younger dill seedlings here they do look a little bit bushier. I think that may be because the first batch of dill that I did, I started harvesting it maybe too early, and that may be part of the reason why some of these shoots are so incredibly tall but very spindly. So it'll be an interesting experiment over the next few weeks here to see if in fact this is enough light to maintain dill plants, like kind of the side shoot light from the actual LEDs. So yeah, we'll see how this goes. The last thing I need to do before letting this do its thing is we need to give it a nice deep watering. These are really large containers. So I'm probably going to end up putting this entire 4-liter of water into the soil. The soil wasn't wet when I put it in. It wasn't super dry, but it didn't have a lot of moisture in it. So I think this this container will take this whole jug of water without a problem. There are lots of holes in the bottom of this container. So if I do overwater it, the water will come out the bottom, and that's why I have it sitting on one of those trays so that I don't make a big mess in the basement. Okay, well, thanks for watching, everybody, and remember, keep growing.